Hey everybody, what's up, Earth Speedsters? This is a new series called Man-UpRite, R-I-T-E, as in rites of passage. I'm here with brothers from my men's group. To my right is Sifandos, a men's coach and a life coach and personal development healer.
Whatever you want to call it.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like
whatever
that.
you like, I'm good.
Yeah. Bryan Reeves with a Y. Bryan is an author and also a coach, working mainly with men.
Yep.
Doing
relationship coaching.
To his wife's liking. Yeah.
To my wife's liking. That's a fact.
And then to his right is Adam Knight, a musician, an amazing musician, incredible singer, but also a very wise and adept man himself, and lots to teach in that arena. So we've come together to talk about men's work and elevating ourselves as men to come forth and take care of the world.
Be the men the world needs.
Yeah. Gentlemen, first of all, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Really means a lot to me. This is something that we've been trying to get off the ground for a while. Man-UpRite is the name of this series. And you, men, have been an integral, important part of my personal growth as a man. For the audience out there who doesn't know, we are in a men's group.
Integration.
So yeah, when I turn to you, or some of you, the group, which is a group of 12 men, for support, for guidance, to knock some sense into me. And I really don't think that I'd be where I am today if it weren't for men like you. And I really have come to believe that men need other men. We need each other. And I never had real, true adult male, balanced, conscious role models growing up. So again, thank you for showing up today. Thank you for showing up for me over the past couple of years. And thank you for showing up for the audience, because I think men's work isn't something that is very well known. I assumed that it was taking off and that everybody had a men's group. And then I ask friends or people when I travel, and they actually ask me, what's a men's group?
Right.
Yeah. What is a men's group? Yeah. So I thought we'd start this off. What is a men's group? What is men's work in this hyper-individualistic culture where everyone has to, do it on their own and take care of themselves, survival of the fittest? You men are all top of your game in this work as well. So how lucky am I, right? How lucky am I to have men who've taken an active role in learning what it means to step up and show up and clean up and be a divine expression of masculine. We put you together on for a reason.
Thank you.
That's the one thing, is at any given moment, there's gonna be some battling between the men. Yeah. And sometimes it's nice to just sit in the back and watch, so.
Well, it's part of the definition, right, of men's work and being in a men's group is conflict and repair. And
I'm already leaning in.
You know what that means.
Yeah.
He prefaced that. But to me, that's a big part of it. And that's something that, I've been learning over the years as well. And for me, if I was to define men's work in the most simplest way, it's a deliberate exploration of all things that is us. As men, as humans, really, really choosing to see the whole of that which we are and not deny any of those parts. And the thing is, we can't do that in an echo chamber. We need other men reflecting back to us. And that's part of it. There was a joke here. Bryan and I are so similar and we're different, And there's such a deep love and respect, and I don't want to speak for you, but a mutual admiration. And we butt heads and there's conflict sometimes. And what I've been learning by being in this particular group is how to repair from that and how to take ownership of that and how to be in humility and like really see where am I not showing up in a more, I guess, way that I want to show up. You know, in a healthier way. And I'm learning to undo a lot of old patterns and a lot of old internal structures that I thought were the only way I could function in the world, in any relationship. And that's not the case.
Or so it's like a dojo. It's like
Big time.
a
For me.
sparring arena to practice.
It's a place I think that we get to learn how to do conflict really well.
Yeah.
And not in ways that are disempowering to others, that are, not learning the old school ways of power over. I'm going to dominate, assert my power, and crush everything around me, including the earth, and make it bend to my will. But rather, how can we share power?
Yeah.
You know, what I love about our group of men is that there ain't a pushover amongst us, but there also, I think each of us maybe have, as men do, we have the temptation to want to dominate. We were talking about that earlier, to want to control, but because we all respect each other and we want to share power.
Yeah.
In a way, we want to learn how to dance with life, and I mean, in our relationships with our wives. I mean, we're men of a generation that doesn't necessarily believe in or subscribe to the subservient wife paradigm, for example. And so anyway, I think men's work is I guess the thing that I want to share. I didn't know how lonely I was in my life as a man until I was 41 years old. I'm 48 now. I had no idea how alone and lonely I was. I was surrounded by people, girlfriends, a lot of female friends, guy friends, but I was lone wolfing it in my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know men's work was a thing. And when I started myself getting involved in men's groups and men's work, holy shit, the conversations that we then started having consistently with men that kept showing up also. The consistency of communication, and I didn't have present fathers either.
Yeah.
Helping me find my way, helping me check in on what's actually going on for me as a man, as I'm growing and evolving. And so in many ways, like, you guys are also like my surrogate fathers in many ways.
One thing that I can really relate to with both of what you said is that echo chamber. And for me, even just listening to the birds right now, there's so many different things happening. There's song happening over here. I've heard robins, I've heard Bewick's wrens, and there's a bush tit. There's smaller songbirds over to my left, and they're having very different experiences. This bird over here is alarming, and this bird over here is singing, and yet they are aware of each other. And I think in our group, one special factor and unique factor about this group is that we aren't locked in that echo chamber, and we help each other reflect in the mirror. And for me, men's work is, me being aware of my own mirror. Yes, self-love, self-empowerment, being with myself. But like Steph said, I need you. There is no other way to do this life without each other. And for me to realize that and surrender to that, surrender to have the willingness to put my sword down and not protect what hurts the most inside, and let you see that, and let you hold that, for me, has changed me forever.
We all have different ways of protecting that, right? Protecting ourselves that we've learned, like techniques that we've established from a very young age often. And there are different techniques, right? Like your technique might tend towards aggression.
Yes, very much so.
I can confirm. We can confirm.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I hope I wasn't presumptuous. But and I tend to appease or charm or comply. And I learned that from a young age. So what are some of the different, like how do you, is that really what the core of it is letting down your guard and being able to be vulnerable? Because I know there's a lot of talk about men just need to learn how to cry or something like that, right? It's a cliche like that.
You know, there's a lot of untrustable men's spaces. And when I say untrustable, what I think makes us trustable in a sense to each other is we are calling each other out, but we're never doing that disrespectfully. You know, we're calling each other forward. You know, I remember when there was an early time in our meeting. Like we've been together, what, 4 years now or so? Yeah. We've been together. We've been married for all 13 of us. Where he got really angry at one of the guys and said, "I want to smack you in the face right now."
Oh yeah.
Right? And the rest of us, a number of us, were like, "Yo, Adam, we understand the anger, we appreciate the anger, and that's not going to be okay in this space."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Likewise, and so there's no dismissiveness. Like, dude, how the fuck could you say that, man? Don't be a fucking bitch or whatever the dismissive language is. That didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
There was an honoring of your anger, but also a calling forth of something else.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I grew up in an incredibly abusive past, and there wasn't a space for me to manage when I see red, to manage and so many people put that on the individual. Now, don't get me wrong, it is my responsibility to manage my responses and my triggers, but I need mirror. I need iron to help sharpen my iron, but I need it in safe spaces. I need it in ways that can help make that blade precise and help make that blade accurate. So, because, you know, certain spaces can sharpen anger to be a weapon, to be harmful. Right. And we see the world, you know, do that often, and how, you know, like social media, man, there's times where I'm swiping through and I see how they are influencing men in so many ways to be like, you know what, fuck women, fuck it all. I'm gonna do me, I'm gonna lone wolf this shit because no one's got my back.
It's called that's MAGTOW, that's men's rights movement, that's,
yeah.
you know, the manosphere, that's
Yes.
a lot of that.
So in society, you have to get it right out of the gate. You don't have room to be messy, a place to make mistakes and try different ways of being on for size.
Yes.
Right? And here, we're not afraid of you. We know your heart.
Yes.
We love you. And we're not taking it personally when those shadows come up.
Yes.
So you are perfectly safe to be messy, make mistakes, and we will honor you and love you when you're at your nastiest. And we will lovingly guide you into a higher order of being.
Yeah.
If we can.
And that may look like letting him, or letting any one of us be as we need to be in that moment.
Without having to correct it.
That's right, which is, you know, a collective and individual compulsion that we have as men, right, to fix and to change things and to take something and make it different, because that empowers us at some level, right?
Yeah, and to get it right immediately.
Have to get it right.
Yeah.
If we don't get it right, we're less than. There's something wrong with us.
One of the things I value most about us doing what we do together is even the conflict that we get in. We've talked about conflict already early in this. For me, it's so healing to be able to kind of lose my shit in a moment of unskillfulness or just getting upset, trigger, whatever. All my old family shit coming up. I mean, you guys know so much about my family system and what I grew up in, and most of the world can't hold that from me. They can't be with my messiness, right? I can go to a therapist, and I do, and that's great. But that's, 1 hour every few weeks at best. With you guys, I can.
So how is it different than therapy? Like, what's the difference? Because I stopped going to therapy because this is so much more effective.
It's true.
Well, my therapist isn't going to really argue with me. So I don't really learn that skill, how to do conflict well, skillfully. Again, sharing power, not trying to take power from you guys, even though sometimes it may feels like that. I wonder, it probably feels like that sometimes.
It's an interesting question. Yes, and yes, it does, but more unconsciously. And so and I'll speak from my own personal experience, my reactions come from that place, but there's not a conscious thought in my mind going, Bryan or Adam, Adrian is trying to take power away from me. It feels that way because I'm perceiving to not be heard,
Right,
or
yeah.
I'm experiencing an elevation in non-verbal communication that is indicating to me, shit, that reminds me of when I was younger.
Diesel trucks.
That reminds me of the violence that I experienced. My nervous system is now imprinting a very familiar experience onto you, and now I'm being reactive. Now my protective strategies are coming through. Where I think, and we'll just speak for our group because we're in it now, is that I will constantly hear and I will constantly say, and if I don't say it enough, please ask me to say it more if it serves, is we're not going anywhere. And I have this same conversation with my wife, like we're in a challenge right now, but we're not going anywhere. We're going to stay here, we're going to be with this, we're going to experience this, we're going to feel this, we're not going to bypass. And so there's this safety that we have is more than just, of course it's very physical. We know in our bodies that we revere each other, we respect each other, we love each other, we care for each other. But there's this very bold statement that says, I'm not going anywhere. You can show up as you want. It doesn't mean I'm going to tolerate it. I'm going to call you forward. I'm going to ask for better versions of you as I want you to ask for better versions of me. However, I'm going to still be here. That there, knowing that risk has now been removed, that you can behave, I can behave in a particular way and still be loved for it, doesn't mean I'm not going to be asked to shift and change. Yes. But to still be cared for, to still be accepted, to still be seen, to still be heard, to be met with non-judgment, to be met with compassion, to be met with fucking fire, but still be in it with me. Yes. That's what 90-something% of the world is missing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and the snake is here.
Yeah, that's the cottonmouth.
Well, just watch my back.
I've got your back.
I know you got my back. But you just pointed to something that I think is so key and core. It's the word is belonging. Belonging. I mean, I've worked, and I'm sure you have as well. I've worked with so many men who don't even feel like they belong in their own families. Oh, yeah. They don't belong with their partner. They don't know where they belong. They don't belong at their jobs. They don't know where they belong. Yeah. Again, that lone wolf approach to life. And I think what we've created here is a system of belonging, a place where we can feel like, wow, I belong even when I'm messy, even when I fuck it up. Yes. I get to belong, and that is priceless in a world where belonging is so hard to come by.
You said something you said it years ago, maybe first week even maybe, that I really believe ties into this is service over saving. And that has stuck with me since day one of you saying it. Am I saving in this moment? What savior complex or mentality or trigger or mechanism or protection of some kind? And it's not negating the protection instinct as men, but this is why I believe, take the military for example, and you were in the military, and several of the, few men in our group were in the military, and a lot of us have those tactical mindsets. And for me, how do we serve in this moment and look beyond the self? And I believe the military does that really well. And obviously there's shadow sides of that and, unprocessed anger and being in stewing pots of this and that. But one thing, the group that I how do we sacrifice for one another without not serving ourselves? Yeah. That service, I think, is really important here, And I think to tie into that even deeper is we're all trackers. Even Adrian seeing the cottonmouth snake and still being present in this conversation, right? Like that's possible. And, listening to the birds right now and still listening to your heart.
So in many ways, we are learning and teaching each other and relearning, unlearning, coming together to create new learnings together on how to be together, how to work through conflict, how to create a sense of belonging for one another so we're not seeking it out there in unhealthy ways. I mean, I spent my whole life wanting to just be accepted, and I designed a whole life so that I was powerful enough so that people wanted something from me, so that they would come at me, so I felt needed, right? And so what is it like to be needed without having anything to offer? Like any material goods or any,
Right.
anything superficial, but just your presence is enough.
Yeah.
But this is hard, this shit is hard. To learn these new skills, to first get out of your own head and your own ego, to not want to be the savior so that you feel important, but to actually serve even when you don't get the acknowledgement or the accolades. I know all of us at one point have had the thought, I need to get out of here. I can't be a part of this group. The group doesn't want me. I'm too good for the group. Like any reason to escape the presence and the being here and the being seen by the other men. And we've all tried to wiggle our way out of this. So it's hard and it's scary and it's challenging. How did we get here? How lucky are we? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to think, for those men out there or those women who love those men, what's their first step? How does one build a group?
Well, I just want to acknowledge first what you said about always wanting to escape, and it's that part of me that's just like, I'm out. I don't want to do this. I don't think on some level, I have wanted to not go to every men's group I've ever been in. Even with us, and when we gather, there's a part of me that's like, I don't want to do this shit. I don't want to do this. And yet I am always delighted and so glad that I went, that I showed up. That showing up piece.
Well, in many ways, I think, this is my story, showing up is the main thing.
It is.
Just show up. Just be there. And so I started this, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Also on Entourage, can't tell you how many people have come up to me and be like, love your show. I have friends like that, right? Me and my boys, I'm E, my buddies, they associate themselves with the characters because I think they want that sense of camaraderie.
Yeah.
And love the show, obviously I'm proud of it, but the values that it portrays is not necessarily the healthiest, right? How do men create their own? Do you have any ideas on how they?
We've evolved in tribes, right? So we've lost our way with that as men. We're very isolated in the world we live in. We're hyper-individualized, we're hyper-competitive. So it's about striking, and maybe balance isn't quite the right word, but greater alignment with the sovereign self, the self that is individualized and self-reliant and can go within, with also sharing that aspect of self with the world, with other people that are close to him. And so the pain of not changing needs to be greater than the pain, my apologies. The pain of change needs to be great.
The pain of staying the same.
Yes.
I got you.
We got
Let's
you.
let him pause and let's let him say it. We got time.
You can keep that in, I don't care. The pain of not changing needs to be greater than the pain of change, right? That's essentially it. I said it right the first time and I fucked it up. Yeah. So until a man reaches that point, he won't seek something outside of himself or within himself. And that's been my personal experience, and that's been my experience with working with so many others as well. And that's been my experience in this group too. That, I've been asked multiple times, I consider myself an extremely open person. And all of us actually, and vulnerable, and I can get messy. And I've been asked multiple times, hey Steph, can you be a little messier? Can you bring it here before you've just thought about it a little bit? And it's not wrong. Yeah. There's layers to all of that. Yeah. And I'm messy.
Right. You look good messy. We want you to look bad messy.
I think I look bad messy, but that's my perspective. But I can get messier. And so again, that comes back to that. If I want to change, part of that change is being messy, and that's very uncomfortable. And it's being witnessed. It's being witnessed. I mean, one of the, I guess, core competencies or key characteristics of masculine energetics is witnessing. I have to allow not only myself to witness the layers and aspects of myself, but also other men that I trust, even if in those moments I don't trust them. I have to trust them enough to witness me and hold me and grow from that and learn from that and not be attached to an outcome of how it needs to be, how my messiness needs to be received, or how I need to be post that messiness. And so there has to be this surrender into the mystery, into the unknown. Yeah. And if we, again, talking about masculine and feminine for a moment, for me, I associate the mystery with the feminine. So there's aspects of self I have to tap into that may be a little foreign to me and may be really scary, but if I don't go there, I don't grow. Yeah. And for me, growth is why we're here as humans, full stop.
So you said we grew up in tribes. So on a genetic level, we crave community, connection with other.
As a biological driver, and that's another thing, right? You just said that we need each other. There's a stigma around need in our society and relationship. It's unhealthy to need. No, it's not. It's unhealthy to need in certain ways.
Oh, he's just being needy.
Yeah. It's unhealthy to be needy when you're compensating, or when you're coming from a wound, or when you're coming from a pain and you're trying to feel better about yourself by not addressing the actual core pain. But when I say, we evolved in tribes, we evolved in ways that we relied on each other for survival. That's still innate within us. Our self-worth and our self-perception was predicated upon the value we delivered in a group. If I'm not delivering value in this group, I fucking promise you, all of you, or most of you are going to ask me to be better.
Yes.
And I want that. I want you to say to me, be a better version of you, because right now, you're not.
30 years ago, I went to, my stepfather started going to Alcoholics Anonymous. 30 years ago, I was 17, maybe 18, 19. Anyway, I went to one of the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and I was blown away by the conversations they were having there. I remember thinking at that age, wow, everybody needs to be having these kinds of conversations. They're talking about real shit in these rooms. Well, I never, I wasn't myself an addict, so I didn't go back to those meetings. And I never found those places again where people were having real conversations. Maybe workshops, but there was always women at those workshops, which I loved, because I did, fuck men. I didn't trust men anyway, right? But I never found a place where men were having real conversations. And I think about what's available to men these days, and it's addiction groups, really. That's where men, they've got to hit some bottom. They have to have some major crisis that involves an addiction of a sort, whether it's gambling or porn or alcohol or drugs, and then they start having these conversations. But what about the countless men that aren't hitting that bottom, but that are still suffering? They're still alone. They're bearing their burdens alone.
Yes. But you can't convince them to
look
before it gets bad and too bad.
Well, that's where the self-reliance comes in as well, right? The internal focus on self.
In addiction groups, one of the first things that people have to admit is they're addicted. Yeah. Well, I think when it comes to men and you ask the question, like, where do they begin? Well, fucking admit. First, just admit that you're lonely. Yeah. That you are trying to live your life alone, even if you're surrounded by people. Look, if you are having the real conversations you need to be having with friends and family and other men, especially, you said it at the beginning, we men need men. We can have conversations with each other that I'm not going to have with my wife.
100%.
Well, and I shouldn't have with my wife.
So one of the reasons why I brought up the entourage reference with the guys I've seen out in the world who cling to their friends. They're, my high school friends or the friends I grew up with. And I think there's something sweet about having friends that are that long lasting. But where I find it challenging is in the word friends, right? Because in many ways, if you've grown up together, you in some ways must have established some shared way of being in the world. And if you're lost or if you're struggling and your friends haven't done, or they don't have the skills to call you forward or reflect, hold up a mirror to you, then are they really truly the right kinds of people to support you? So I know for one, I can't have these kinds of conversations with my high school friends, right? I love them,
Ditto.
but
Same.
they're not in the same place that I am, and it's not better or worse. It's more just that I'm craving this kind of challenge
Yeah.
and support.
Yes.
So I just want to underscore that like finding the men that you perceive as having the skills or the ability or the life that you want to strive for, as opposed to just whoever's convenient or expedient or who's just your friend,
Yeah.
right? So you almost in some ways have to curate your men's group.
Yes.
You don't just go to your default group of
Be
friends.
deliberate and selective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of how we begun in ways. You know, Preston, he sought out.
Well, he realized he was alone.
He realized he was alone.
Surrounded
and
by
he,
people, but doing it alone.
And he took the initiative to literally pick and choose people for his life. And, you know, my position and how that even happened is I reached out to Preston. I said, you know what? I want to connect with this person. I'm going to try. And that's really, it took me trying. It took me surrendering. It took me accepting that I needed more. And what I see a lot of online is there's all these videos of talking, you know, men's suicide rates are much higher. You know, they're just, they keep climbing. And what I see a lot of reflections and videos back of these men online is saying, oh, I got nobody. Yeah, talk to someone? Are you kidding me? That's nobody cares. And to realize people actually do care. It's just we're all so protected and in this self, like, yeah, I'm not even gonna inconvenience you or inconvenience myself by even going past the barrier of this mythical barrier to even go, I need help, or I just want to talk. I don't know what about, there's something pulling me toward you. And so many ancestral tribes talk about this thread, this rope between us. In Lakota, they say, Aho matakwiasin, to all my relations, I see you, we are connected. And no matter what, I'm connected to you. I could pretend to like, this doesn't exist. It's all bullshit. I am super fucking connected to you. And for me to disregard that, now, do I have to feed and honor and tug that rope? No, that's a choice. But there is something between you and I. And I feel like we disregard the threads between us. And it just took a tug. It took me going, okay. And all of a sudden, just by me doing that, you tugged back and that mirror happened. And all of a sudden, my heart, it's like, I mean, in a platonic way, it's like being I'm in a relationship with you.
Yeah.
I'm in a relationship with you. I love you.
I remember the first meeting that we had. It was like 5 years ago. Yeah, we met in LA. You guys weren't there at that moment, but Adam, you were like a excited puppy dog.
Yeah.
You were like, this is the coolest shit ever. What are we doing?
Yeah.
I'm more guarded.
Yeah.
You know, I came into that a little more guarded. I came into that a little more like, okay, who are these dudes? Can I trust them? Am I safe here?
Yeah.
Right? And you were just like, fuck yeah, let's go. This is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting. I think men will approach these differently too. You know, that's kind of my blueprint is I tend to be guarded at first. You know, I was with you when you first came in. I was with you as well. You know, like who are these new men? Because I don't trust men.
Yeah.
Because of the men I grew up with. Not bad people, but I didn't know how to learn to trust them.
You're connecting a dot there with respect to what Adam spoke to, right? And that is that, for me, there is often, for so many of us, so much underlying unresolved trauma in our family units, in our family of origins, where we learn to be ourselves, where our personalities are shaped, where our nervous systems learn to interact with other people, where we learn to say, this is safe, this is not. I must retract, I can lean in. And until that is resolved, we're very guarded in such unconscious ways. It becomes so habitual over decades or over years that we don't even know we're doing it. And coming into a group where the guideline, call it an expectation even, call it a rule, a law if you like, a governing law, is to be as open as you can be. Whatever that means to you in those moments, right? Is to bring all your ugliness and to bring all your beauty and to bring all your wonder, to bring all of you. Man, for me, I experienced a great deal of judgment growing up, and I'm not alone in that. I'm not alone as a man, as a person experiencing judgment. That judgment caused me to retract, to be very careful and meticulous with how I say something I want to say, how I present, what masks I'm wearing. I'm not the only one doing that. There are billions of people around the world wearing these unconscious masks that are creating distance and intimacy. So when we come into a group where we're setting the precedent of we're here to grow together, you can't do separate and together at the same time. They can oscillate, but if the premise is, and the goal, if you like, or the foundation is together, then at some point we're going to have to see all versions of ourselves.
That leads me to the question, why do we have to do this? Where did this come from? Where did this absence come from? Where did this conditioning derive? Because, you know, I'm about to be a dad, like eminently, about to be a father. And of course, you know, I'm reflecting a lot on, you know, what does that mean? What to be a father? And then I think about my father, and I think about how I grew up. And just being in this men's group in many ways is me healing the parts of myself that, you know, didn't have the education, wasn't given the wisdom of, you know, from my father. I like to think, you know, and I don't want to blame him, like, you didn't give me these skills, but there's skills that I didn't learn growing up. And I now have to learn. I have to seek brothers like you to help me work through that. So our parents didn't have these skills, right? Our fathers didn't teach us this. And so it would have done us a great service. We would have started ahead of the game had we had developed these skills at a young age.
Yeah. This is a really interesting topic. And, you know, when we look back, like say San Bushman in the Kalahari in Africa, the parents never disciplined their kids. You know, the uncles and aunts did. So, in long and the short, it took a village to raise a child. What's the other ridiculous quote is, if you want to go, you want to go alone, you don't want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And I think of, you know, in my mind, I thought I was done. Let's say I'm 34 now. Let's say at 22, I was like, okay, this is life. I've walked this far. Here it is. And then being in a men's group, being in community, all of a sudden I realized there's so much more road. There's so much more. It's just continuing. I'm not saying finishing. I don't think there is a finish. It's just a continuation. It's expanding. And then all of a sudden I felt a hand on my back when I entered this group, and almost like, come on. And then there are times where you lean back and you're like, I'm done. And then Steph's hand on your back, come on. And then we kind of help each other move forward and expand.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking linearly, like you just made me, I was thinking on a timeline, like a beginning and middle, like in a finite way, versus an ever expanding growth where my father didn't have the skills because his father didn't have the skills because, you know, and now we get to, in this moment, be this together to develop skills that we can pass on. And there will be other challenges, but it's hopefully ever expanding and calling forth, opening, unfurling like a flower.
That's beautiful, Adrian. And
it is beautiful.
Men's work is unfolding like a flower.
Yeah.
That's going to bring hordes of men to men's work.
Do you like a flower?
I think, you know, one of the things I've struggled with as a man is as I became conscious of it, was what feels like a broken cord to my lineage of men. I had a dream many years ago, right before my grandfather died. I hadn't even been in touch with him for years. And then I had a dream a week before he died. He came to me in a dream, and his energy, my grandfather, my dad's dad, in the dream, he passed my dad and his brothers. Like, his energy went around them because they were so dysfunctional and so disconnected. And my dad didn't even go to his dad's funeral. talk about it disconnected from the lineage.
Oh, it's another
You know?
important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
My dad did not even go to his dad's funeral because of his brothers. Anyway, my grandfather bypassed them in this dream and came into my body. I woke up sobbing. It's like my paternal, the male lineage was, in a way, it was so symbolic in that dream. He was coming into my body. That's never left me. And yet, you guys know, I just went to visit my dad for the first time. I hadn't barely seen him in the last 15 years. And I just, like 2 weekends ago. And that part of me that wants to reconnect to my lineage, like, where do I come from?
Yes.
And I don't mean in some, like, the cosmos. I mean, fuck, Dad, where the fuck are you?
Yeah, tribe. Like,
Exactly. That I think so many of us men are
Expansion.
so disconnected from our male lineage.
Yeah. It's so interesting you say, you brought this up earlier, place in the world, to have belonging, to have identity. Who am I? Like all of these things, because being alive can be so disorienting. It's such chaos, and we need to, we crave some certainty, some definition, and we can create that for each other. Not to say that ultimately we don't, spin off into the abyss, like our souls on some level, whatever that is, and we could talk, theological philosophy at some point. But just while we're here, we want to feel comforted and a sense of definition.
Rooted.
Well, in our group and in men's work and in men's group, we're learning to reparent ourselves. We're learning to mend the generational patterns, pain, trauma, disconnection that we've experienced. There are many men, and I would say the majority of men, meaning well over 50%, of boys, I should say, that haven't had a very clean and clear connection to their father.
100%.
And I would say every single one of us here is 100% strike rate, right here in this group of 4.
Yeah.
That, thank you, sir, have experienced or have not experienced safety in their relationships with their fathers. And I went to my grandfather, and to my grandfather's, my paternal grandfather died very early, but I was very close with him. My maternal grandfather, and I'll do my best, like, man, I fucking miss him so much. I fucking miss him so much. And he was what a healthy father was for me. So I can very much relate to your story that you just shared. I really relate to that. And so in these groups, I think what we're doing, and probably for a large part, very unconscious, is we're learning to be better fathers for each other, to the fathers that we never had. And that is an epidemic. That is a very painful thing that we are going through. To me, that's the real pandemic, is disconnected parents.
I said that earlier. I made the comment we're like, you're like my surrogate fathers. And that might sound a little weird, right? But we are reparenting each other. We're stand-ins in many ways for the benevolent, loving and strong and fierce fathers that most of us had one or the other. We either had just the completely benevolent, weak, impotent pushover of a father who
Very
had
passive.
no backbone, very passive.
Yeah.
You could put your hand right through him. Where are you, dude? Or we had the tyrant.
Yeah.
We had the fucking bully, and in my case, I had both.
Yeah.
Very
absent as well, right? Absent from parenthood, absent from fatherhood, or physically absent, not in the picture at all.
Yeah, we haven't met Russell in our group. He's never even met his dad.
Never even met,
Doesn't even know his dad exists.
Yeah.
My dad left at a young age.
Yeah,
and,
and
I was estranged from my father. And then the role models, the father figures I did have were dysfunctional. They taught me how to womanize, how to cheat, how to lie, how to hide, how to basically get away and continue to be immature and adolescent in my thinking, or were inappropriate with me, like sexually would be, I had a guy who was part of the Big Brother program who was inappropriate sexually with me because he was a pedophile. Right?
Wow.
So that was internalized, and I had to, those were my role models. That's what parenting was, right? And even, and you say this, there was one guy who, his name is Guy, actually, and
Convenient.
no, I'm gonna cry, dude. He read to me. He read to me once, and it was so nourishing and so important. I wanted it so bad, and he did it just once. And he wasn't, he was my mom's friend. He lived upstate, so I never saw him much. But in my mind, he never came back. He never showed up again to read to me again. And in my heart, I was like, that's all I wanted, was someone to read to me like that.
You know, one thing I try and do, and I don't do a good enough job, so I apologise for that. I do my best to see the little boys in you, because that's what I want too. Because when I'm acting out and when I'm being reactive, it's just my little boy coming out, not knowing what to do. When you share that story then, I saw your little boy being read to and actually feeling safe, just for a brief moment. And the thing is that as men, we're not really, we're not shown how to be like this. Like, I can be like this, and I can also be in different expressions as well. And I've learned through men's work is to not shy away from this emotion. It doesn't devalue me as a man or make me less masculine.
Nope.
That's the stigma or the perception that so much of society has. So we don't allow ourselves to actually experience the range that is man, which is very necessary in the world that we live in. And I think we're walking around very fractured. And so to tie a bow on that, in this particular group and in men's work, in healthy men's work, we feel more whole, and we bring that wholeness to everyone else in the world.
Steph, it makes you trustable.
Yeah.
I have a confession to make. I watched my first Entourage episode a few days ago, maybe a week ago. I was like, all right. I remember when you first came into our group, I remember I pointedly was like, I've never seen Entourage. That was my way of like.
And I was waiting to find out too. I really wanted to know.
That was my my way of being guarded, being like, look, man, you like, who the fuck are you, kind of thing. Like, prove yourself. That's my stance. My first stance. I went through that with you as well.
Hell yeah.
But,
yes, he did.
and look, you did a great job. Good job. Look where we are. I'm just kidding. And so I watched an episode, just the very, very first episode. And I understand why people, adolescent boys and young men would love that show. And I remember watching it, was like, I can't watch the show, only because I wouldn't want to hang out with these guys. Nothing against them, but they are not trustable. That group of men, just in the first episode, maybe they get more trustable. Maybe their characters deepen, and I don't know what happens, But I immediately felt like these aren't trustable men to me. I wouldn't feel safe. I'd have to myself armor up and play along with the ruse of, let's fuck bitches and let's whatever, party and
You say it like son of a you say that.
to hear me say that.
It's like,
I got
what
that
just
side.
happened? I was like you're in a fucking Twilight Zone.
Like, oh my God.
No, you're very mature. Like you're saying that was like,
I have
rock my world.
vocabulary. I do
Look,
have that
yes, you do.
vocabulary.
You're not wrong. I mean, the show is a wish fulfillment. A materialism.
That's interesting though, what you just said.
What?
I want you to expand on that. It's a wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
However, it's not necessarily the healthiest of wish fulfillments and sustainable.
Well, it's not sustainable. I mean, who wouldn't want a world in which you could be high all the time without consequences? Like, you can party and not get hungover. You can, have pleasure at will, all the material things, all the comforts, and not have to deal with the realities of life. That's a wish. The wish is fantasy, right? It's not reality.
Yes.
So it's not healthy, because the reality is we want to live fulfilled, healthy, constructive lives in this world.
Yes.
With consequences, in a world that there are consequences and conflict and things. So the skills you would learn in a fantasy aren't the skills you would learn if you have to go out in the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah, or be in an actual relationship.
As I'm sitting here, two things are happening for me. One, when I was sobbing my eyes just with you, we seek to desire to have this interaction with our fathers. Like, that would be, if our dads, all of them were sitting right here between us, and they could join us in this conversation, like,
Oh man, you just touched
dream,
my heart,
every
bro.
man
Fuck,
man
dude.
could relate to that. Now, the thing is that I'm not going to say is possible in my current state with my dad, but I will say by me doing this work, knocking on his heart's door in ways that I know, being a tracker, tracking that, and that's what you just did. That's what your trip was. You tracked that, went there, and you had connection and moments like this moment. Maybe it was a moment. It wasn't a 2-hour-long conversation of moments that, because we can just effortlessly fall into it. But so there's one is that's, we get to repair and be that, reparent, like you said, with each other, and reparent ourselves with each other. Second is this men's group specifically, I would trust every single one of you with my future children. Because I sure as hell, would Adrian trust his future kids with, let's say, the characters in the show of the first episode and give them to the child and trust.
It's funny, they suggested that might be the, because all the Entourage guys have kids now.
Yes.
The actors, right? The people
the
playing
actor.
the
Reunited episodes, you think?
Well-
A new season?
Well, it's like, what would the reboot look like,
Yeah.
Right,
And I think it should happen.
right? Like now we're all dads.
I really think it should happen.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but you said something about, it just struck me, like to have our fathers here in the circle.
Imagine.
In the circle, right? They're not above on a platform. They are on equal plane, an equal plane. And I think part of growing up is to step into that equal plane with your father.
Yes.
This is beautiful. I just got a vision. So when we're born as boys, and as we grow, we are here, and we see our fathers here, our parents, we deify our parents.
I mean, just even physically, it's
Absolutely, yeah, just even
above
physically.
you.
And we look to them for safety, for trust, for guidance, for movement through the world, for all of it. As we become older, irrespective of the experiences we have, they are true, they matter, but irrespective, just for a moment, this starts to happen. And there's a point where we're here, and we're equal, so to speak. And the baton, I think idealistically, the baton is being passed down to the son. And the son now is rising. And as the father becomes older and his life force is drained, he regresses to childhood essentially, at some level, right?
Looks to the sun.
And it's like this. And if we're holding resentment, harboring pain, anger, all the things,
or holding on to the idealistic pedestalizing of your father, relinquishing, relieving the control to the deified father.
This here becomes torturous.
Yes.
And it doesn't become beautiful. It doesn't become ceremonial.
I'll tell you, one of the things that has been profound for me in our journey together was, remember when we were in Temecula on that retreat?
Yeah.
And around the fire that one night.
Yep.
So we'll go on, we'll have our
You were
retreats
chopping
a couple
wood,
times
bro.
a year.
You
I
were
was chopping
chopping
wood,
wood.
and you were guarding the fire.
Yep.
A conversation came up about confronting our fathers.
Oh yeah.
And so a number of you shared.
When I got closest to Adrian, that was the initiation to get closest to him. Was that moment.
Interesting. Well, I remember your story about confronting your father, you talking about your father, and it occurred to me that I've yelled at my father, but I've never really confronted him. I've yelled at him about, details or this or that. I've gotten angry at him, but I never went to the heart of what I needed to confront him around.
Do you feel you did on the most recent trip?
Definitely.
Yeah, I
In
think
the
so.
last few years,
So go explain that again. You've professed, you've made noise, you've complained,
exactly.
you've thrown
I've been loud, I've
tantrums,
thrown tantrums, I've run away.
but you've never vulnerably
That's a key word,
opened up.
Risk.
Risks. I never took real risks. And it was through your men's sharing of your stories that I realized that.
The dojo.
The dojo. I hadn't realized that. It was like, I think, I don't know, I'm 48 now, I was maybe 45 at the time. It was like probably 3 years ago already. And I was like, holy shit, I haven't had this vulnerable, that's key. Like the real revealing of my heart and to take the risk that he won't be able to receive it.
Yes.
Or he
But
may
he's
even
gonna-
reject it.
He may even reject it.
Not understand it.
And that's largely what has happened.
Yeah.
But that's almost irrelevant. it's been in the offering of that, in the stepping into that has been the, okay, I'm no longer his son. I am his son, but now I'm a man seated at the table with this other man.
Yes.
And in the very action that you took, that was a very manly,
Yeah.
grounded, fatherly role, like to
Yeah.
actually be that.
Yes.
Not that you're his father, but that you
Right.
were embodying that
It
strength.
was the way that you approached it, because when you said confront, I want to preface, I love, continue to preface that and go even deeper with that, is, I was heavily abused, as you guys know, I was heavily abused when I was younger, physically. And to a level that it changed me forever and sent me down a very dark path into my teen and early 20s. Now, I confronted my father, confronted him, stop, many times. But the way that I did it is I thought I had to become him to confront him. So I became the villain to try to get him to hear me. This is the only way he's gonna listen, is if I hit back, if I abuse him back and treat him the way that he treated me. And that never worked, because that's how he was treated as a kid. So I merely just met him in his trauma, and it was just a perpetual, like a dryer, just falling in this constant cycle. And because at some point when I started to look here and say I need help and seek, not from him, but from other men that held that torch in a way that I had never experienced, then all of a sudden I could go back with that torch and at least get near my father, and he could feel a different kind of fire. And I confronted him in a way, and it started to work over time. And now my father and I have a very strong relationship, because I had to not confront him in the way that this is the only way I knew how, was with violence.
Well, I have to say, Adam, and it's just been so beautiful to watch you move through your impulses and your conditioned impulses in real time, and to watch you like relax and ground in. It's so beautiful, because you're so much more effective, because we know you got that fire. I feel it, but you're not letting it spill over. You're placing it, appropriately in the moment. So
In service.
Yeah.
In service.
Not trying to save.
Not trying to save anybody.
Ken Wilber speaks about this around meeting people in their states of consciousness, in their level of consciousness. If we were to look at a linear level of consciousness, although he prescribes some more like a spiral dynamics effect. But let's just say your father was a level 1 consciousness, which is the lower rung, right, or level 2. Okay. And you're attempting to come to him from level 4, which is more elevated, but he hasn't been there yet, so he knows nothing about that. Yes. I'm wondering if the villainization that you met him with and the violence that you met him with was a precursor and a foundation for you guys to relate, in such a way where he couldn't push you in the way that he pushed you before, metaphorically and physically.
Yes.
And he knew now there was a greater boundary, because you exerted that boundary by speaking a language that he understood.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
100%.
It's not sustainable, and it wouldn't be healthy for you long term, because then you ended up coming back with a very different approach. But what I think, you tell me what you feel, because you were in it, is that when you met him in his way, it laid a foundation for him to be able to hear you in a new way.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
100%. I also think about it as terms as past the point of reasonable force. I had to meet my father with force. I had to stop him. There were times where
He had to feel fear from
he had to feel fear from me.
Yeah, he had to feel scared of
He had to, 100%, for him to, let's use the term, to fuck around and find out, in a way. But what I love in Batman: The Dark Knight, right, where Two-Face said, uses the quote, you can either die a hero or stay long enough to see yourself become the villain. So I think it's that dance, right? It's not sustainable, but there has to be a change, a shift, and I had to meet it like this, but there had to come a time where I had to shift before I became the villain.
Well, I'm a big fan of Ken Wilber, and the audience should check out Ken Wilber if they're interested in human development, personal development. A couple other books that you can recommend: Love Her or Leave Her.
Choose her.
Choose her or
every
leave
day
or leave her. There you go.
Bryan Reeves.
I've read it, by the way. It's fantastic. I really have.
Okay.
The Robin Knows, John Young.
Yeah. The Robin Knows.
Yep, great tracker book. Great for
Okay,
archetypes.
we'll put these in the show links.
Fire in the Belly.
Fire in the Belly. Okay, and I'm gonna say Iron John is one that really helped me. But yeah, seek out men who you perceive as being of the caliber that you want to become, and invite them in.
Yeah.
And keep going until you can create your own group. We use an app called Marco Polo, and that's a way for us to stay in touch on a regular basis.
Be in circle.
Yeah, it's a container that we can all tap into. It's a video it's a video sharing app, and you know, I really feel like it's not just men's work, personal development work, but really this is community work, and this is reparenting. It's repairing our relationship to self and others so that we can build a society, we can build a healthier civilization going forward into the future. So thank you for giving that gift to me and supporting me, and I'm happy to be here with you and with the audience. I think I like to think that more and more people are wanting more for themselves and each other, and they're calling themselves to a different standard. So the work that you're doing is helping that, and hopefully if people want to reach out to you individually in the work that you do, why don't we let the audience know how to get to you?
Yeah, website stefanos.sifandos.com, or any of my social media handles at Stefanos. It's a tongue twister. So.
You might want to consider at Steph.
I wish I tried. I fucking tried.
Yeah.
It was taken.
And I'm Bryan Reeves, Bryan with a Y. Diesel truck Reeves.
Trucks.
That's my
2001 Peterbilt.
Any Volvos go by lately?
I'm Bryan Reeves. It's Bryan with a Y. That's very important to me. Bryan Reeves, REEVES.com. I'm on all the socials, and that's my website, bryanreeves.com. My books are on Amazon, and
Great book. Choose her every day or leave her.
thank you.
Yeah. Adam Knight Music. I'm a singer, and Spotify, Adam Knight. Go listen to my music. Men's work, Rise Up Warrior.
Yeah, well, thanks for being on Man-UpRite. And by the way, it's not R-I-G-H-T, it's R-I-T-E.
Like
Ooh,
Rite Aid.
like rites of passage.
Boom.
Like a rite
Bang.
of passage.
Boom!
We didn't touch on that today.
No, I
Yeah,
know,
that's
but
a whole nother
we
episode.
could literally talk for hours and hours and hours, and we usually do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is a contained series on Earth Speed, and I would love to have you all back again, and maybe as individuals, and we can go even deeper. And this will be a continued conversation, a continued series. So this is just the first, the opening
Iteration.
salvo.
There it is.
I like it. Opening. Boom.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.